China's involvement in Africa has always been characterized historically by a non-intervention policy. So if you look at the first decades of this surge, let's say since the mid to late 1990s, this surge into Africa, they very much planted the flag of non-intervention and framed their involvement that way. That has had to change. It's necessarily changed as they've become more involved economically. They've had more businesses there exposed to the political and economic risks that are associated with operating in Africa. And of course, as migration followed in the wake of that. So many Chinese citizens are now based in countries that have their own set of security risks. So that's the general condition. More specifically, 2001 was a wake-up call. Libya, intervention in Libya, the collapse of the state, all of that provided a context whereby China's interests and citizenry were suddenly exposed to not just NATO bombing, but the general chaos that ensued from there. There were great losses in terms of business and the like, business interests. And out of that was the wake-up call in particular was there was no way to preserve and protect Chinese citizens or interests. Thereafter, serious attention was given in Beijing at corporate level, within state-owned enterprises, private firms, and what have you, as to what to do. How is China ready to respond? And this, as early as 2012, the public commitment at FOCAC, the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation, was made by outgoing President Hu Jintao to commit to a partnership in peace and security, whereby China and Africa would find a framework, a general framework within which they would collectively try to devise ways of responding. One of the things they did do, or built upon rather, the Chinese built upon, was a gradualist commitment towards peacekeeping. That had been happening all along. It had started, let's say, in the late 1990s with engagement in UN operations, but in non-combatant roles. That's changed after 2012, and we see the first of the deployment of Chinese security troops involved in securing UN positions within Mali, within South Sudan. So that is one dimension of it that's been gradually coming in all along, but this new commitment from 2012 marks a change of attitude. It's not that the flag of non-intervention has been pulled down. It will remain there as a kind of defining foreign policy principle, but as with so many principles, it varies. It's context-driven. It varies depending on the circumstances, and certainly when it comes to the interests of Chinese citizens and business, Beijing has to take it seriously. For Africans, this represents the Chinese interest in security, and the public iterations of it represents an opportunity. At the first level, as one of the permanent members of the Security Council, and given that about 60 to 70% of all peace and security issues are Africa issues, it's good to have a friend, as it were, on the Security Council who can bat for or support your interests. So there's that kind of diplomatic form or level of it. Beyond that, there are the financial resources, which China has indicated, and in a speech in September this past year, September 2015, President Xi Jinping announced that China would be providing, I think it's $1 billion over a 10-year period towards peace operations in the UN, as well as about $10 million towards the AU and supporting AU. So these are opportunities for Africa to gain resources. I think it's a little more of a two-way street than, I know often one talks about the rhetoric of mutual benefit and these sort of things, but I do think that there is a genuine element of that at play here, because African peacekeeping troops, the African environment itself, this is an area where Africans have a great deal of experience. So trading knowledge, as it were, from Africa about all these matters for the kind of resources, financial resources, possibly equipment, that kind of thing, and security would be a fairly even-handed trade.